Welcome back to the Seminole Sidelines podcast presented by the Osceola. I'm alongside Bob Ferranti, I'm Mario Masudi, and we're here in Charlotte at the Westin Hotel in Uptown, and football is back. We got our first taste of being back on the gridiron, and the guys gracious enough to come up here, Mike Norvell, Jordan Travis, Fabien Lovett, Jammie Robinson, all dressed very sharply. I must add, Bob was dressed pretty sharply as well for the occasion.
Nobody looks as good as Jammie Robinson in a salmon suit.
We had to tell him what color that was. He said it was peach, and I went, my guy, have you ever seen a peach? Salmon. This is pink or it's salmon. We're not.
He's a Georgia boy. He knows what a peach should look like.
I would hope so. But he was gracious. He was awesome. I think Jammie showed a lot of personality, and you can kind of see a lot of these guys are getting comfortable as figureheads of this football team, becoming leaders. Where a few years back, Bob, you and I have talked, there was a lack of accountability, I think, and not in a way of, they're not going to class or whatever, but it was in terms of this is your program. And I think year 3 under Norvell, that's been an emphasis for him. Years 1 and 2, building a foundation. Year 3, I want you guys to be the ones who are taking ownership of our program and leading everyday charges. And really from all of our conversations, it seems like the guys are doing that.
Yeah, if the storyline has been persistent of Florida State has one of the youngest programs in college football, one of the youngest rosters, well, now they have an older roster. Those younger guys who took their lumps on the offensive line, for example, your Darius Washington, your Murray Smith, those guys, Robert Scott, they're older, they are knowledgeable, productive, they're comfortable speaking out and being leaders. I think if we're looking for a true storyline going into year 3 for Norvell, it is that comfort and confidence that these guys have. It is that consistency of the coaching staff. There's no longer wholesale changes from Jimbo to Willie to Mike. Yes, you've had some coaching changes, but Alex Atkins got a promotion. Tony Tokar's got a promotion. Randy Shannon got a promotion. Everybody who's new on the staff is also an old guy from the last year's staff. I think all of these elements of continuity make things much easier from a transitional standpoint, as well as strength and conditioning. You're building off of, oh my goodness, 2020 was a nightmare from strength and conditioning, trying to do things on Zoom, which was just crazy. And now you've got a full year in 21, you've got a full year in 22 leading into this season. I think we see guys just very composed and confident with what their roles are. They're very much ready to see how it plays out with what's going to be a very difficult schedule.
And it makes a difference, right? Like when it's the players on a day-to-day basis that are telling you what is required and what you're expected, what's expected from you. It's different than when a coach has to constantly hammer that into your head because, coach is so important. But anyone who's played sports knows that after a while, a coach, some of the words a coach tells you kind of fly over your head. And not intentionally, but it's just, here's this guy that's, been saying the same mantra week in and week out and telling me to do the right things. But when a guy your age and when a guy who's your peer, when he's a teammate, when he's the one who's telling it to you, you listen a little bit differently. And I think ownership was something that Mike Norvell wanted this program to have from the player standpoint. And he even said it, we want to do it the right way. We're not trying to have one good season. We've got to sustain. He goes, I've seen it work. We have to sustain. And in his time at Memphis, right, Bob, Memphis wasn't the most talented team. But damn, they were really tough, right? Every game they were fighting. In the fourth quarter, they were fighting. There was a sense of belief in that locker room. When they beat Ole Miss that one year, I think it was in Memphis. It wasn't a pretty game, but they weren't more talented than Ole Miss. They just fought Ole Miss to the death and were tougher. And I think those are some of the principles that he's trying to implement, but it's not for him to tell the players. Eventually he wants, like I said, the players to be able to kind of coach themselves, and the best teams are player-led. So I liked that he spent some time talking about that. I thought it was interesting, you mentioned it, that the coordinators, the number of coordinators that have transitioned, it's hard on a quarterback. And Jordan Travis even mentioned that. He's finally comfortable in being asked what the coaching staff wants from him. And he can go and implement that and be himself and creative within that offense. How do you foresee his season and some of the things that he said here in Charlotte this week?
I think the best things for Jordan are he's got roughly 325 snaps now at Florida State, 325 passing attempts. More comfort day to day after that week to week, what built over the last few seasons. And then the other thing is there hasn't been good talent around Jordan Travis. A lot of it is, yes, Jordan can play better, can make better decisions, can be more accurate. He needs better receivers. He needs better tight end play. He's got better offensive line play because those guys are now often in their third year in the trenches, whether you were a backup or a starter. Jordan will be better because the supporting cast is better.
Yeah.
I think Jordan will just have everything around him, the pieces, to be more successful. He needs to slide. He needs to not scramble as much. At one point, I think he truly said, I need to not scramble. But part of that is receivers getting open and offensive linemen blocking better so that he doesn't have to, oh my goodness, the play is broken down. I've got to scramble. That's my only option. So again, the supporting cast, the pieces, will make Jordan Travis better. And I think that will result in a more efficient offense, more points, and more wins.
Yeah, you've got to have pieces to be able to throw the football too. And I think Florida State knew that. You've got a whole new unit essentially right now at the receiving core. But Jordan mentioned to a lot of the media here that he's trying to become less of a scrambler. Not that that's not a big part of his game, because it always will be. But he's trying to stay in the pocket more. He's trying to be able to withstand pressure, to kind of have a later clock. And he wants to prove, he said, I got a chip on my shoulder. People don't think I can throw over the middle of the field. I don't know where this narrative started, but they just think I can't throw. And for whatever reason, I don't know why that is, but I've been really excited about showing people that I can do it. And, he showed glimpses, right? Like there were glimpses of 4th and 14 and throwing seam routes, and he became pretty good at throwing the deep ball, especially down the sidelines. But I think he's excited to kind of showcase his evolution as a quarterback, his progress that he's made. And I think, too, he was adamant to mention, like, being a leader on a team now where it's your team, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I think you mentioned 4th and 14. I think of those deep passes to Ja'Kai Douglas, for example, Miami, Notre Dame. There were some big moments where Jordan was decisive. He had some time, delivered some good passes. The North Carolina game, incredibly efficient. Not a ton of passes, but the ball didn't hit the ground. The offense just clicked around him. I think Jordan knows what's being asked of him. There's understanding that Norvell's offense is going to stay essentially the same. He's not learning something new because of Alex Atkins. I think the other thing that's really cool is Alex Atkins wants to run the ball. Florida State will run the ball a lot in the traditional run game, which will take a lot of pressure off. Okay, Jordan has to make a play. Jordan has to be the playmaker of the offense. Well, Trey Benson can be a playmaker, can really change the way this offense works. Micah Pittman, we think, can truly, he doesn't look like a playmaker. He's 5'10", 200. But that's an NFL type of receiver mindset of where I'm going to get that ball if that rubs off on other guys. Again, the pieces around Jordan make Jordan better. And I think he's more comfortable in knowing what he's got around him. He'll always be respectful, and those guys who are the holdover receivers will always be his buddies, his teammates, his friends. But the missing pieces, I think, are what's going to make this Florida State offense just so much better.
Yeah, without a doubt. And for Jordan, look, there's going to be games where the game plan will call for him to have to run the ball 15 to 20 times a game. And that's just what the doctor ordered for you to be able to defeat a certain defense and then be able to win a game. And that's not to say we're not going to see Jordan scramble and things like that. It's just the down to down. There were too many times last year where 3rd and 8 was just detrimental, right? You got to 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and long, and you said it's going to take a pretty miraculous pass here for us. And it wasn't always the case that way at Florida State. So I think Jordan knows, he's trying to get himself kind of progressed as a quarterback to where when these moments are asked of him, he's able to deliver when a defense drops 8 back inevitably and he's got to hit a seam and he's got to find a pocket. So looking forward to him there. He talked about being a leader, and like we said, guys are asking him questions now, and he's being intentional about trying to impact others. Norvell said it's just amazing seeing how much he's progressed. The body's different. He's about 205 right now, had bulked up to 210 from 185, 190 that he was last season. And he said he hasn't really lost any speed. He says he feels better. He's moving better. The arm strength's better. Norvell even said you look at him and the body is just completely different. And he's taken advantage of nutrition and exercise and the weightlifting program Florida State has under Storms. And I think Jordan Travis is in for a big year, Bob.
Yeah, I think Jordan knew what he had to do to prepare for the season. He had to add on weight. When you get down to 185 as a quarterback and you have to scramble, you're going to take some hits, and it's going to hurt, and it's going to be a tough recovery process between games. He knew he had to bulk up to get ready for the season. I think that's, again, part of the maturation of a young quarterback. You have to invest the time in the strength and conditioning program. He's had that. We could see the results. With Jordan, he just has to take calculated hits. Yeah. Hey, if it's 3rd down and 1 and you got to get that 1 for your team, okay, I'm okay with you taking the hit. But other times, throw the ball away, slide, protect yourself, because seriously, looking at the depth chart for this roster, and you may not want to look at the depth chart. That's the problem. After Jordan Travis, there's a huge drop-off. He needs to protect himself for the betterment of everybody else on the roster, on the offense, because it's just not going to function as well with a Tate Rodemaker or an A.J. Duffy who's had 1 spring. You can't expect a true freshman to go out there and function. What's going to be good about this team is they took the losses and they learned from 2020 and 21, and now in 2022, we think all those losses, all those experiences build toward part of Mike Norvell's mantra, the climb. It's climbing from something, from 3-6 to 5-7 to potentially 7-5 or better. I think a lot hinges on a guy like Jordan Travis staying healthy, recovering, and being in good shape week to week just to be ready for every Saturday.
Yeah, he's got to play at least 12 games a season for Florida State, in my opinion, and I think he knows that. But, Bob, good transition there, moving into close games and some of the defensive guys we talked to. Spent a lot of time with Jammie Robinson and Fabien Lovett, who said, we lost a lot of games by 1 score or less, and it was a defensive lapse here, a mistake here. We're learning that we can't make those mistakes in the fourth quarter. We can't play well for 35, 40 snaps. I mean, we could be dominant for 40 snaps. Well, what happens in the other 25 to 30 snaps in a game? And that's something they want to really kind of shore up this season, is having a bunch of guys, too, though, that have played with each other. They're experienced. They've been through the battles. I think that's going to help Florida State really win some of these close games going into 2022.
I think we talked to 2 guys who determined they weren't ready for the NFL and came back. Fabien Lovett might have been a nice draft pick and had a good career, but he knows there's a reason why to stay with Odell Haggins, to develop and to be part of a defensive front that we think will be quite good, even though the edge rush has some question marks. How are those guys going to step into increased roles? Jammie Robinson might have been a really good, 1 year at Florida State, it worked out well, led the team in tackles, I'm ready to make the jump. But he knows, the consistency, if I stay, if I keep evolving and learning and producing, I think these guys get where they stand within the defense really, really well. You focused a lot on Jammie Robinson, talking with him, and Jamie's big about takeaways. Adam Fuller's huge about takeaways because you're going to give up points in this era of college football. People are just going to throw and spread you out, and the scoreboard's going to get lit up. Jamie's very focused on, we got to get that rock. We got to get the ball somehow. We've got to figure out how fumble, interception, some kind of takeaway just to get the ball back to Jordan Travis. Yeah. That's going to be the name of the game defensively, I think, moving forward, because you're going to have to win some of those high-scoring games. And the only way you're really going to do it is, make some stops on 3rd and short, maybe even a 4th and 1, but you got to have takeaways.
You have to be able to create havoc, and the defense last year, I think, especially second half of the year, fundamentally got better, right? Like, they were on a down-to-down basis. If you look at advanced stats, they were pretty good, especially second half of the season. But you got to, like you said, Bob, you got to create some turnovers. You got to be able to impact the game more. And I mean, the NFL, you see it every day. They are highlighting turnovers. They're emphasizing turnovers on that side of the ball. And if you're a student of the game and the way that the game's going, you see that defenses are, like I said, trying to create more havoc. One thing that I thought was interesting that Mike Norvell said, and he was really kind to kind of do a smaller breakout session with just the media that traveled from Tallahassee in a private ballroom. And it really was any question you want to ask, and he answered candidly. He talked about the Notre Dame game last year. And yes, it was a close loss. And yes, we fought. But he was kind of surprised that the fan base was patting Florida State on the back for a close loss. And he was saying, that's great, and we appreciate that the fans appreciate our fight and our toughness, but that's not the end goal, right? And that's something he thought. You can't just keep saying, oh, you guys were close last year. You can't say we fought and we were in every game. At some point, you got to get over the hump. And I think Norvell saying that, he understands that at some point, there needs to be more than just, okay, well, you were good enough, because you weren't really good enough when you don't win these games. And I think the mentality that he's building, the pillars that he's trying to build for this program, Florida State's, I think, going to win some of these closer games this year, and I think they're going to learn in those moments about what it takes to win. Right? There's success, and then there's how you handle success. Because anybody can say after a loss, well, we have to do this, this, and this right. And yeah, I'm motivated to get the next one. But what about when you start winning? Are you hungry enough to be able to still see the things that you have to improve upon and take it from week to week?
I think the positive that we saw overall from year two was fight. This team would fight to the finish, and it wasn't the result often that fans wanted to see. We saw some ugly games early in September, but then we saw after an 0-4 start that bounce back, that Syracuse. It's weird to find a moral victory in a home win over Syracuse, but the way it was achieved with a goal line stop with Kalen DeLoach in the defensive front making that stop, then it kind of sparks you into the North Carolina game where you're not really expected to win up there, but then from the second quarter on, you're beating what was legitimately a really good ACC team at that point. Then you go up to Boston College and win eventually. You beat Miami in a huge setting, a marquee win for not just Norvell but the program. You see the corner turning from, oh, that's cute. Look at Florida State, being able to keep up with Notre Dame. That's really cute, and that's a good moment for them. Now you're seeing, okay, the expectation is not just keeping up with, but being competitive and being in position to win those games. As you look at to 2022, it's how many of those wins early can you start stacking?
Yeah.
Build some confidence in September for Florida State, which we haven't seen very many early wins for this program, maybe since 2016 Ole Miss.
Wow.
So let's not discount Duquesne, but to some extent, everybody's looking at LSU. A great performance and the potential of a win there builds your September, keeps guys truly invested day to day, and like you said, stack those wins and get that practice and make that practice as good as it possibly can be each day, so that you are in position to, bye week, go up to Louisville, then Wake Forest. I mean, this is a really tough schedule. If it starts off badly, there's no foundation. If it starts off great, there is a foundation to build towards something that could be a really special year three.
Yeah, you don't want to reassess after 2 or 3 games what your goals are, because you want early in the season to be able to have total buy-in on what everyone's goal is, right? Winning a conference, making a playoff, things like that. And obviously some teams are more equipped to do that than others, but you got to give yourself a shot early on to be able to continue to build that. Not to mention the recruiting that Florida State wants to do. And if you can play well in August, I say August because we're going to play in August this year, and September, then you've built the foundation with some of those recruits too that can last throughout a season because they have peaks and valleys. All seasons do and all recruitments do, but want to give yourself a shot for sure. What was the old saying that Bobby Bowden used to have? It was like lose by a lot, or lose big, then win close, then lose close, then win close, then win big. You're at win close mode, I think, right? You've been losing close. You were losing big. Mike Norvell's kind of shrunk that gap till you started losing close, and you found a couple close wins. Now it's time to win more close wins and more close games, so that eventually you can start blowing people out down the road in a few years. But Bob, Jammie Robinson, that secondary has a chance to be pretty good this season. He mentioned a couple of youngsters that he felt like, McCall and Thomas have played really well. Cooper's been playing really well. But he also mentioned the linebacking play and what Tatum Bethune brings to the table.
I think for all the attention on Jared Verse, and it's well-deserved because he is athletic and you will enjoy watching him. He's also coming from the FCS level. He's not an SEC 2-year guy or whatever like a Jermaine Johnson, Keir Thomas. Put Jared Verse where reasonable expectations for him. I think Tatum Bethune could be a true difference maker for this defense. We haven't seen high-level linebacker play in a long time. Kalen DeLoach is developing into a guy who's playing at a higher level. But with Tatum Bethune alongside him, and we're going to see a lot of 4-2-5 defenses because you have to play 5 DBs with the spread. I feel much better about putting a Kalen DeLoach and a Tatum Bethune out there. And, hey, you got to worry about the short passing game. You got to wrap up the running backs and make sure they don't get into the defensive backfield. I feel so much better about the linebacker group, and I can't remember the last time I have felt that way about a Florida State linebacker group. It's been more years than I can probably count, reflecting back to, say, maybe those 14, 15 type of years. It's been a while. So, yeah, I mean, you're only going to get a guy like Tatum Bethune for 1 year, but what he can do, that comfort and understanding of what Randy Shannon expects out of you day to day, it's a different defense. It's a different defensive coordinator, but he gets it. And I think he can also relay those messages of what Randy Shannon wants day to day to all of those younger guys in the room. And again, that's that great transfer leadership that I think can build into the younger guys, and then years from now, they'll be able to share some of these lessons too.
Yeah, Jammie said Tatum's a ball player. From the day one, we saw it and we went, yeah, that kid can play. And so he has earned the respect of, I think, that locker room already. Fabien Lovett touched on NIL deals and how that's changed the college landscape. We've talked about it, I think ad nauseum, but it has changed some of the things for these older players, because I think we focus on what NIL does for recruits because that's what's in the media and every single day. You're reading on Twitter and all over the place is, oh, this recruit got this and this recruit got this, right? That's in the limelight. But what about some of these older players that are trying to get NIL deals? How is that taking shape?
I think in Fabien's case, it's true. He has a 17, 18-month-old son.
Yeah. So
it's about earning money through your name, image, and likeness, but being able to send that home to Mississippi so that – and his son has some health issues, and the FSU community has stepped up. The GoFundMe that was established last year, it's wonderful that these opportunities are available without going through all the red tape, through all that NCAA compliance. Now you can just do it. And NIL is a wonderful vehicle for opportunities like this for community service. Look, we can critique John Ruiz and everything that's going on at Miami. You can critique the big contracts that are out there. Most of these NIL deals are much smaller, much more, hey, it's an autograph signing, it's an appearance at a restaurant, it's connecting fans to players, which is truly a good thing. It could mean that fans, hey, I got to meet Micah Pittman, I got to meet Jordan Travis. I want to watch them play. Does it bring fans to the stands? Does it bring fans to buying flex packs or whatnot? There are a lot of bad things about NIL, and I think we kind of hear all of the big headline portions of it, the 7-figure this or that. I think for most of these guys, they just want to be respected as a student athlete. And yeah, I think everybody wants to earn their share. And if you're a good, productive player on the field, you're going to earn that share.
Yeah, and I think there's a sense, too, for some of these guys who are 22, 23 years old. If an 18-year-old comes in and he's getting, bigger deals or more attention than a guy who's been here and produced for 2 or 3 seasons, there can be factors of jealousy and factors of not, feeling like you're not getting your due. And I'm not even talking about like Florida State. I think going around to some of these breakout sessions for the ACC schools, we spent a lot of time with Miami today as well. That has been the topic of conversation from the media, is asking players about NIL and how is it taking shape so far, in its term. And it's something we have to keep an eye on. I mean, because it's going to continue, I think, to evolve over the years. I don't think we've seen the last of the culture of NIL, if that makes sense. The cultural change around it, and maybe it's for the better, maybe it's for the worst. You want to talk about some Miami? You and I have both spent a lot of time. We listened to Mario Cristobal. Both of us had a chance to talk to some of their players, Tyler Van Dyke, Will Mallory. And so I think, Miami is in an interesting spot. A lot of them keep saying it, we're going to try and beat Florida State. I think that's always in Miami a goal for them and for the Hurricanes. I think it takes more precedence for the Hurricanes to beat Florida State sometimes, larger than I think some of their other season goals. Like with Florida State, I've always felt like they want to beat their rivals, and it's important, but it's never really overtaken some of the larger season goals. With Miami, I'm like, man, I think they'd rather – sometimes I feel like their fan base wouldn't mind beating Florida State and being 1-11 rather than 11-1 with a loss to Florida State. I get that vibe from the players and some of the fans, but they're excited about what they're going to do with Mario Cristobal. Much more pro offense, a lot more offensive friendly, and what Cristobal can bring to the table. But they feel like there's a commitment in Coral Gables to the sport that's going to last for a while.
I think for a guy who played at Miami, and Mario did about 30 years ago, there's no swag. It's all business. He's a very level speaker. There's no overconfidence.
He acts the turnover chain. It's over.
There's no turnover chain, which fine. But
that's what Mario's about.
He had an interesting line, and to paraphrase it, he said, "We're not gonna T-shirt it. We're not gonna hashtag it. we are." And it's almost the antithesis of Miami, even though he has that immense respect and understanding of the heritage and the prestige of the program. Alonzo Highsmith being in that building, and Mike Rumpf, and he's mentioned so many guys who have come back and kind of shared the Miami legacy, but he's not about what happened 20, 30 years ago. He's about the right now. And we heard some very similar isms. He used a Lonnie Alameda ism, be where your feet are. Okay. He used that today. He used a Mike Norvell, how you do anything is how you do everything. So we're hearing some similar kind of coaching axioms out of him. But I think he's not wanting to put any expectations on the program. He was asked, can you win the Coastal Division? And I think that's an easy yes. I mean, why aren't you going to say yes? You're Miami in division with all these new head coaches. But he instead says, I don't want to put expectations on what we're doing. So I think Mario is the right guy for where Miami wants to go, how Miami wants to recruit. Will he get there? Tyler Van Dyke is the quarterback to build around. Doesn't have great receivers. He has Will Mallory, a really good difference-making tight end. I don't know how all the pieces fit, haven't studied Miami deeply. But yes, to your point, I think Miami wants to beat Florida State probably more than they would take a Coastal Division title.
Yeah.
If you asked them off the record, hey, just tell me which one you'd rather have, I bet 95% would say rather beat Florida State.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, and Tyler Van Dyke and Will Mallory, they've circled that game on their schedule. I think that they want revenge in the same way that Florida State, last year was looking for some payback. All right, so great week in Charlotte here, a couple days that we spent, beautiful Queen City, and the ACC runs a great event every year, and then they took care of the media. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk some about Commissioner Jim Phillips and the college football landscape right now, conference landscape. TV deals all around. He was pretty non-committal for a lot of it. Just kept saying all options are on the table. And gosh, the different media, they tried. I mean, there were questions galore coming at him. And I think he understands that there's a huge revenue gap and that he has to do something. But he kept kind of going back to the whole college athletics is this avenue for us to build character and provide equality all over. And it was all this good old boy stuff from like the 70s and 80s. And to me, it struck this, like, I don't want to say disconnect, but almost naivety of where we are in the college football landscape. Like, we have NIL now. This is no longer you have basically pay for play in some aspects. Like, you can make that argument. We're not no longer trying to be this avenue where we're building better men and women for everyday life. Like, that's not the goal of the NCAA anymore. At least if it is, it's not the goal of the SEC and the Big Ten. They're all about what can I add and get a bigger TV deal. So those were some of the takeaways I have. Maybe closed doors. Commissioner Phillips is talking about, hey, with a little bit more sense of urgency, like, I got to do something, or we're going to cease to exist as a Power 5 conference pretty soon here.
In what was a pretty vanilla, let's say 45 minutes, the 2 or 3 gated communities comment kind of raises everybody's attention and eyebrows because it was a clearly not veiled shot at all at the SEC and the Big Ten. But also at the end of the day, people are tired of the talk and the rhetoric. What are the solutions? We didn't hear from Jim Phillips. What are the solutions? Are there any smaller revenue streams that build up over time that give ACC schools some more money to work with? We didn't hear anything about that. We didn't hear anything about a potential Pac-12 affiliation of scheduling or whatnot that has been kind of reported and rumored. We just didn't. I was hoping for something. I didn't expect him to make a huge announcement.
Right.
But there was nothing really tangible that you could say, well, Jim Phillips is really working on it and we feel like he's close to something. I think he referenced vaguely something that might come up in later July, whether it was like we're talking with revenue consultants. I guess revenue consultants are just people who are analyzing TV contracts and working with ESPN and helping you to kind of make the most out of your ACC brand. I didn't hear or feel anything that jumped out at me from Jim Phillips. But at the same time, he's not a mover and shaker. He's a thinker, a facilitator, a listener. He has to facilitate presidents and chancellors, get them on some kind of similar page of thinking of what do we do as a conference where we are definitely outside of the gated community. The ACC clearly is. I don't have the answers, but I think that's why they have to figure out what the answers are in the short term and the long term, because that revenue gap is going to get to the point where, yes, you can't build this. You can't hire him or her. You can't retain that assistant because I use examples like Charlton Young. CY received reportedly $1.8 million from Missouri,
$600,000
an
a
SEC
year.
school.
Right, as an
he
assistant.
more than doubled his salary from Florida State to Missouri. You can't expect to retain those guys like Charlton Young who recruit and work and have sleepless nights to prepare for opponents because the money is just going to be so good at an SEC school. That's where we're going to see the human capital eventually, maybe more at the assistant level than the head coach level. But when those people go away, you may never be able to get them back unless it's eventually a head coaching job and you figured out the revenue. There aren't great answers. This grant of rights going through 2036 is just an anchor that you have to work around and work with the ESPN. I thought the other interesting thing was brought up. Somebody was asking Phillips point blank, would you consider unequal revenue distribution based on brand or performance?
He seemed open to it.
He seems open to everything.
Right.
Him not shooting it down immediately, to me, is that could be something that we have to look at, even if, say, Wake Forest says, we don't want to do this, but we may have to do this.
Well, you can go to the American Conference if you'd like. I mean, that's just – and a lot of us, the guys who came up here from the beat and we've been chatting, at dinners and things like that, I did like that Phillips mentioned that he's open to an unequal revenue distribution. You've got to pay your brands more money if you want to keep them, right? I think performance is a way for some of these smaller schools to be able to maybe make some of that money back if you reward performance. So if Wake or a Duke or a Boston College or Cuse has like a good season and something, you kind of give them more money. And that's more incentive for them and athletic directors to really try and get things right at those schools. But schools like Florida State, Clemson, Miami, Virginia Tech you can even throw in, or even UNC, they should be making more money than some of these others because they're bringing in more brand value. They're worth more to the TV deal than some of the other schools, right? And I think that's one way you can save the ACC. The other is I think you're getting to desperation mode on what Notre Dame wants to do. I thought, they could have played hardball with Notre Dame a while back and really got them to join the conference, or at least you could have tried when the landscape was different. But now, obviously, Notre Dame is going to do what's best for them, whether that's independent, ACC, the rumors of Big Ten liking them and things like that, and them being mutually interested. Who knows? But a perfect best-case scenario to keep everybody, you add Notre Dame as a football member, you're able to get a bigger TV deal from ESPN, and then you do unequal distributions revenue-wise to some of the bigger brands. I think that stops Clemson, Florida State, Miami, some of the schools that we've already mentioned, Notre Dame, from looking around. And overall, it makes the ACC stronger and I think ultimately just last longer. Because I think conferences in this day and age, who knows where we're going to be in college sports in 20 years. I don't even know if we'll have conferences in 20 years. You don't know that. It's hard to really peg right now. So it allows the ACC to last just a little bit longer. But I was disappointed. I was hoping for a pioneer that was proactive about where this college landscape is going, much in the way that Sankey is at SEC, in the SEC. He seems very much on the forefront and kind of like dictating how this thing's going. And I was hoping for Phillips to kind of push back and say, yeah, this is my plan for the ACC and this is where we're going. And we didn't really get that. So not that we were expecting it, I think. Maybe we were just too hopeful. But overall, a very good week, I thought, in kickoff. And I don't know about you, Bob. I'm excited. Football season's just around the corner. I think the guys report on Tuesday, and they start practice next Wednesday.
Yeah, we've never had that before. It's usually you come back from kickoff. There's a couple weeks. You've got some stories to write. You can focus on, hey, Florida State plays Louisville as a first ACC team. You might write a story about them. Now it's, hey, let's jump right in because camp is literally coming up next week. I think Mike Norvell likes that. I think he loves the way this schedule is setting up. You're playing Duquesne for a reason. Week 0, get the win, but you get that game going right into LSU. You're ready to go, and it's an advantage that they will have over LSU, which is new coach, first year. They've never played together, and
right.
You're going to have to figure that out on the fly in front of a pretty crazy atmosphere in New Orleans.
Yeah, and Jamie Robinson is excited about it. Former SEC guy, so is Lovett. They were both like, that game, you're going to hear about Florida State. You're going to know what's up when we get there. So they're already looking forward to it. But, yeah, man, fun week. Enjoyed you guys bringing me up here with you, and we've got exciting news coming for the Osceola in the future, and we would love to share that with you when we can. And just stay with us. Keep being supportive. We appreciate all of you and subscribers and all our fans listening to our podcasts. The Osceola is going to continue to be a force, and should be some exciting times here for not just our outlet, but for Florida State athletics this time. So, Bob, anything else you want to add on before we sign off and start heading back home to Tallahassee?
Yeah, a bit of a drive ahead, but check out our YouTube channel, The Osceola.
Yeah.
We've got some great videos with guys like Charlie Ward, Kez McCorvey, Mark Salva. Those guys who played the game are analyzing the positions on this 2022 roster. We're going to get the defensive guys out soon and look for Kirk Carruthers, Leroy Smith, do some analysis on their side of the ball. Looking forward to that. We hope you enjoy them. So check it out, like and subscribe it, and we'll have more videos coming soon. All
right. Well, he's Bob Ferranti. I'm Arya Masudi, and appreciate you guys listening here from Charlotte, ACC Kickoff, and this is the Seminole Sidelines podcast.